The Afghan sun was merciless, an orange blaze that seemed to hang just inches above the earth. Heat shimmered over the sand, distorting the horizon like waves of glass. Sergeant Danielle, Donnie Rhodes, wiped a bead of sweat from her forehead as the transport truck rumbled toward Forward Operating Base Falcon. The hum of engines and the smell of oil mixed with the metallic scent of dust. She wasn't new to this. She'd been deployed twice before, Iraq and Syria, but this was her first assignment supporting a Navy SEAL team. Her MOS was simple on paper: weapons specialist and armory technician. In reality, that meant she knew every weapon from the M4 to the Mk13 like it was part of her bloodstream. What made her unique wasn't just skill, it was precision. She could hit a bottle cap at 600 yards without flinching. But that didn't matter much, not to most of the men here. As the truck stopped, a voice called out from the gate. "Well, hell," said Chief Petty Officer Ryan Cole, tall, broad-shouldered, and clearly not expecting a woman to step out. "You lost, Sergeant?" Donnie adjusted her pack, expression unreadable. "No, sir." Sergeant Rhodes, weapons maintenance and field support. "I'm your new assignment." Cole exchanged glances with his men, 7 SEALs, all cut from the same hardened cloth, sunburnt, dusty, confident. One of them chuckled. "Guess the Army's running out of guys." Danny ignored it. She'd heard worse. She offered her paperwork, which Cole took reluctantly. "Didn't think they'd send us." "A specialist," he muttered, eyeing her sidearm. "Guess they thought you could use one," she replied smoothly. Her tone was even, not defensive, not soft. Cole smirked, the kind of smirk that tested people. "You know how to handle that thing?" Donnie's hand brushed her M9 holster, her voice calm. "It doesn't handle me, if that's what you mean." That earned her a few laughs from the watching SEALs, half mocking, half impressed. But Cole's expression didn't change. "Fine," he said finally. "We'll see what you can do. Armory's that way. Don't slow us down." The base was alive with motion, Humvees roaring out, choppers slicing through the sky, radio chatter mixing with the clang of steel. Donnie walked through it quietly, focused, eyes scanning the surroundings. The armory was her world, her sanctuary. Inside, she unpacked her kit: cleaning rods, grease, carbon scrapers, precision tools. She ran her fingers over the rifles lined neatly on the rack. The SEAL team's weapons were in good condition, but not perfect. She saw wear patterns, misaligned sights, even a few poorly seated bolts. "They treat them like muscle, not machines," she murmured under her breath. Hours passed. By afternoon, she was knee-deep in disassembled rifles, humming softly to herself. Then came the voices. "Hey, Rhodes." It was Petty Officer Delgado, one of Cole's men. "Chief wants his Mk170'd by 1800. He says it's drifting." Danny looked up from her work. "His zero's fine. The problem's his breathing pattern. He pulls right when he exhales." Delgado blinked, half amused. "You telling me Cole doesn't know how to shoot?" "I'm telling you physics doesn't care about rank," she said, setting down the rifle barrel. The men snorted, shaking their heads as they left. But that night, when Cole tested his rifle again, the rounds landed dead center. He said nothing, but he noticed. By dusk, the base cooled to a bearable warmth. The team gathered near the mess tent, joking and swapping stories. Donnie sat apart, cleaning her sniper rifle under a floodlight, its metal gleaming silver in the dark. "Hey, Rhodes," called Cole as he passed by. "You gonna sit there polishing all night, or you plan to actually shoot that thing someday?" She glanced up, her green eyes steady. "Depends," she said. "You planning to hit what you aim at?" Laughter erupted again, but Cole didn't smile this time. He studied her, maybe a little curious now. Later that evening, as she cleaned her weapon one last time, Donnie overheard them talking inside the tent. "She's good-looking, sure," someone said. "But come on, we don't need babysitting from a girl with a gun. She's probably never been under real fire," another voice added. "Probably flinches at mortar." Cole's voice came next, quiet but firm. "Doesn't matter. Command assigned her. Let's just keep her out of the field." Danny's jaw clenched. She looked at her rifle, hands tightening around it. "Just a girl with a gun," she whispered. The words stung, not because they doubted her, but because part of her knew she'd been waiting for this test all her life. When dawn came, the SEAL team was prepping for a mission, an extraction in Helmand Province. Donnie watched them pack, double-checking weapons and gear. She approached the tent with a clipboard. "Chief, I recalibrated your optics. You're good out to 900 meters now," she said, setting the rifle down. Cole barely looked at her. "Appreciate it, Rhodes, but this is a SEAL op. You stay here and make sure the rest of our gear's ready when we're back." Donnie nodded. "Copy that, sir." She stepped aside as they moved out, their convoy kicking up a storm of dust. The sound of the engines faded into the desert, until all that was left was the hum of the wind. She returned to the Cums tent, slipping on her headset, listening to the rhythmic static of radio chatter. The base commander sat nearby, half-focused on paperwork. Donnie tuned in to the SEAL frequency. Their mission progress was steady, calm. For hours, nothing happened. Then a strange silence. A faint triple click came over the line, soft, deliberate. Then static. Her head shot up. "Sir?" she said quickly. That was their distress code. The commander frowned. "It's probably interference, Sergeant." She shook her head. "No, I know their pattern." That was a code. 3 short clicks. "They're pinned. Stand down, Rhodes. We'll wait for confirmation. But by the time we get confirmation, that's an order." She stared at him, her pulse pounding. For years, she'd been told to wait, to let someone else take the risk. But she knew, instinctively, that those men were in trouble. She tore off her headset, grabbed her rifle, camo belts, and body armor. As she strode toward the motor pool, the guard at the gate frowned. "Orders, Sergeant?" "Not anymore," she said. "They need help." She climbed into a Humvee, dust rising in her wake as the engine roared to life. The desert stretched endless before her, an ocean of sand and silence. The road was barely visible, the heat shimmering like smoke. Donnie gripped the steering wheel tight, eyes on the horizon. She didn't have GPS clearance, just the faint memory of the coordinates she'd glimpsed before radio loss. The wind howled against the windshield, and her heart pounded with it. "They called me a girl with a gun," she whispered to herself, pressing the pedal harder. "Let's show them what that girl can do." As she vanished into the burning light of dawn, a plume of dust trailed behind her like a battle flag. The radio crackled faintly, distant, broken voices calling for help, and Donnie Rhodes drove faster. The horizon shimmered with waves of gold as the morning sun climbed higher, bleeding heat into the barren Afghan sky. From the base, Sergeant Danielle Donnie Rhodes watched the SEAL team's convoy disappear into the dust. The engine's growl slowly faded until only silence remained, the kind of silence that made her skin crawl. She walked toward the armory, her boots sinking into fine sand. Around her, the base buzzed with routine, soldiers hauling crates, mechanics tightening bolts, the distant whir of choppers. But Donnie couldn't shake a feeling. Something about that mission felt wrong. The SEALs were heading into Rasht Valley, an area infamous for ambushes. The Taliban had eyes everywhere there. Donnie had seen the mission brief, and she knew their extraction point sat in a bowl-shaped canyon, easy to get in, impossible to escape without air support. She'd said as much to the commander the night before, but her warning was brushed off. "They're SEALs, Sergeant. They've handled worse." She'd forced a smile then, but now that phrase rang like a curse. By noon, the heat was suffocating. Donnie sat in the communications tent, headset on, listening to the chatter from various patrols. The static-filled voices of the SEAL team came in and out of frequency. Routine updates, brief check-ins. "Falcon, this is Viper Team. En route to Objective Echo. ETA 20 minutes. Copy Viper, proceed with caution." The base commander, Major Callahan, nodded approvingly, marking notes on his clipboard. Donnie adjusted the frequency dial, catching fragments of another signal beneath the static. The SEAL's tone was calm, focused. She recognized it, the rhythm of professionals doing their job. Hours passed. The heat outside grew unbearable. Sweat beaded along her neck, trickling down beneath her collar. She focused on every sound. She knew the difference between gunfire and thunder, between wind interference and coded signals. Then it happened. At 14:07, the channel filled with static. Then 3 sharp clicks, faint but deliberate. Danny froze. Her eyes darted to the clock. "Major," she said, voice tight, "we've got a code." Callahan looked up from his notes, half distracted. "Code? 3 clicks. It's a distress signal. SEALs use it when they're compromised, but can't talk openly." He frowned, leaning closer. "Could be radio interference, Sergeant." "It's not interference. Listen to the rhythm. 1, 1, 1. It's deliberate." He hesitated. "We wait for confirmation. Standard protocol." Donnie clenched her jaw. "By the time we get confirmation, they'll be gone." "Sergeant," Callahan said, firm now, "I gave you an order. You're not part of that op. Stay out of it." The words landed heavy. She nodded stiffly but didn't move. When he left to answer another call, she replayed the sound through her headset again and again. It wasn't just 3 clicks. There was a faint break afterward, like someone's breath caught in static. She knew that pattern. It was the signal for pinned down. Her gut twisted. She yanked off her headset, storming out of the tent. The wind kicked up dust devils as she crossed the yard toward the vehicle bay. Every step felt heavier, but her mind was clear. She wasn't going to wait for permission to act. At the motor pool, 2 mechanics were working under a Humvee. She approached fast, voice sharp. "Fuel this up, now." The younger mechanic blinked. "Ma'am, we can't." She held up her rifle. That wasn't a request. The man swallowed, nodding quickly. As they fueled the vehicle, Danny loaded supplies. Water, ammo, smoke grenades, medkits. Her hands moved automatically, years of training guiding instinct. Then she grabbed her headset again and switched to a secure channel. Static hissed and a faint voice emerged. "Down enemy on the ridge. Need support." It was faint, broken, but she recognized it. Cole's voice. Her heart hammered. "Viper Team, this is Falcon 2. Copy if you can hear me." No response. Just crackling air. Donnie slammed the door of the Humvee, turned the key, and felt the engine roar beneath her hands. She shifted into gear and hit the gas. The tires spat dust and gravel behind her as she tore through the desert. The land stretched endlessly ahead, flat plains broken by jagged mountains and the occasional cluster of withered trees. Her only guide was the sun and her intuition. Every few minutes, she switched radio frequencies, trying to catch even a whisper of the SEALs. She thought of Cole's smirk that first morning, his voice echoing in her head. "You know how to handle that thing?" "Yeah," she thought grimly, "I do." The road narrowed into a dirt trail, winding between sharp ridges. Her eyes flicked to the fuel gauge, half full. The wind outside howled, carrying the faint smell of gunpowder. Then she saw something, faint plumes of smoke in the distance. Her pulse spiked. She slammed the pedal. Minutes later, she reached the edge of a narrow canyon. The ground was littered with debris, torn backpacks, empty magazines, and a shattered radio antenna. Her breath hitched. Then she saw the Humvee, flipped on its side, riddled with bullet holes. The metal still smoked from gunfire. God! She whispered, climbing out of her vehicle. Her boots crunched over glass and gravel as she crouched beside the wreck. There were drag marks, deep, erratic lines in the sand leading toward the rocks. Someone had been pulled, maybe alive. She followed the tracks, rifle raised, every sense alert. Then, movement. A shape slumped against a rock, camouflaged uniform soaked in blood. Danny rushed forward. Hey! Hey, can you hear me? The man's head lifted weakly. Petty Officer Delgado. His face was pale, lips cracked. Rhodes? He rasped, disbelief flickering in his eyes. What are you doing here? Finding you, she said firmly, dropping to her knees. She pressed gauze against his wound, tightening a tourniquet with practiced precision. Where's the rest? He coughed, pointing shakily toward the west ridge. Trapped. Enemies got the high ground. Cole's still out there. Her chest tightened. She peered through her scope toward the ridge. Tiny flashes of light flickered between rocks, sniper positions. Can you walk? He shook his head. Don't go up there, Rhodes. You can't take them alone. She smiled faintly. You guys always say that. She dragged him behind a boulder for cover, propped his rifle beside him, and set her comms beacon down. If I don't come back in 10, hit the beacon. Reinforcements will pick you up. Delgado grabbed her wrist weakly. You're insane. Maybe, she said softly. But insanity gets things done. Donnie crawled up the incline, staying low, her rifle slung tight. The sun beat down, scorching the rocks beneath her palms. Every movement had to be calculated. She could hear voices ahead, foreign, sharp, echoing between the stones. When she reached the ridge, she saw them. 3 hostiles, rifles trained on a cluster of rocks below. There, huddled behind a broken Humvee door, were Cole and 2 remaining SEALs, pinned and bleeding. Donnie steadied her scope, heart pounding. The crosshairs hovered over the nearest enemy. She exhaled, let her pulse drop, and squeezed the trigger. Crack! The shot echoed like thunder. 1 man fell instantly. The others ducked, shouting in Dari. Cole's head jerked up. He looked through his scope, then froze. It was her. She fired again, shifting positions quickly. Another man went down. Bullets ricocheted around her, chips of stone slicing her cheek. She rolled behind cover, reloaded, and peeked out again. The last shooter sprayed wildly in panic. Donnie waited, calm, patient. When his clip emptied, she moved. 1 controlled shot. Silence. Below, the SEALs stared upward in disbelief. Cole grabbed his radio, shouting, Angel, is that you? Her voice came steady over the comm. Copy that. Sit tight, Chief. I've got eyes on your 6. He laughed, a sound of pure relief and shock. As she scanned the ridge, Danny saw movement farther up, reinforcements. Dust clouds rising. There wasn't much time. She ducked back behind the rocks, catching her breath. The sound of her heartbeat filled her ears. She looked at the horizon, endless, burning, then back toward the men below. They called me just a girl with a gun, she whispered. Guess that's all they needed. She chambered another round and steadied her scope. The rescue had just begun. The canyon was eerily quiet. Dust hung in the air like smoke, drifting through beams of sunlight that filtered over the jagged cliffs. Sergeant Danielle Danny Rhodes pressed her back against a rock, her breathing steady, rifle tight against her shoulder. Her heart was hammering, not from fear, but from focus. Below, the SEALs were trapped in a crossfire. She could see Chief Ryan Cole crouched behind a torn Humvee door, bleeding from his forearm, shouting orders to the two men still alive beside him. They were boxed in, outnumbered, and running low on ammo. From her vantage point, halfway up the ridge, Downey could see what they couldn't. 6 enemy fighters moving in a pincer formation, closing in. She toggled her radio to the SEAL frequency, voice low and calm. "Viper team, this is Falcon 2. I've got visual. Hold your fire unless I call it." Static crackled. Then Cole's voice, ragged but fierce. "Rhodes, is that you?" "Affirmative," she said, scanning through her scope. "You've got hostiles at your 11 and 3 o'clock. They're moving tight. I can clear the ridge, but I need 10 minutes. 10 minutes? He snapped. "We don't have 2. "Then you better make them count," she replied coolly. For a second, there was silence, then a low chuckle. "Copy that, Angel." Angel, the call sign she'd used during training years ago, before anyone cared enough to remember it. Hearing it again sparked something deep inside, a reminder of who she really was. She slid down the slope slightly, adjusting her angle. Her sniper rifle, an MK-13 Mod 7, was customized to her specifications, reduced recoil, extended scope. She sighted the first target, an enemy scout crouching near a boulder. Her finger curled on the trigger. She inhaled once, then exhaled. Crack. The man dropped. Before the others could react, she shifted, aimed left, second shot, 2 bodies fell behind a dune. Dust erupted, screams echoed through the canyon. The SEALs below seized the moment, firing bursts toward the ridge. Downey used the distraction to move, crawling across rocks, her elbows scraping raw against the sandstone. Her shoulder throbbed from the earlier graze, warm blood seeping into her sleeve. She ignored it. Through her scope, she spotted a sniper hidden behind a nest of stones, long range, trained, steady. His barrel pointed directly at Cole's position. "Not today," she whispered. She lined up her shot. The world narrowed to the circle of her scope. Crack! The sniper's head snapped back, body falling limp. Cole's voice came through again, this time louder. "Holy hell, that's some shooting." "Keep your eyes up, Chief," she said. "We're not done." The remaining enemies regrouped quickly, shouting orders in Dari. 2 moved toward her flank, trying to box her in. She slid down from her perch, rolling behind a larger rock as bullets shredded the space she'd just occupied. Her rifle clattered. She switched to her sidearm, an M17 pistol, and fired in short bursts as she moved. The sharp bang, bang, bang echoed off the canyon walls. 1 bullet grazed her leg. Pain flared, but she kept moving, teeth clenched. Her mind calculated every angle, every sound. She needed a higher ground again, something with a clear sight line. She spotted a narrow outcrop a few meters above her, slick with sand but reachable. Holstering her pistol, she slung the rifle across her back and climbed, boots slipping, hands burning against the hot stone. The smell of cordite and blood thickened in the air. When she reached the ledge, she lay flat, breathing hard. Her shoulder screamed, but she ignored it and steadied her rifle again. Through her scope, she caught sight of Cole. He was dragging one of his men, Petty Officer Yalan Torres, wounded and barely conscious, behind a rock. The 3rd SEAL Mason was reloading frantically. They were trapped, still pinned from the opposite ridge. Donnie switched her gaze. There. A hidden machine gun nest halfway up the opposite slope, camouflaged by a torn net. That's what was keeping them pinned. She inhaled, adjusted for wind, and fired. Crack! The first bullet hit the gunner's shoulder, spinning him sideways. She fired again. The second shot hit the ammo box. The explosion ripped through the nest, flames licking the air. The SEALs below cheered over the radio. "That's our opening. Move now," she ordered. "Head east toward the canyon split. I'll cover." Cole grabbed Torres and slung him over his shoulder, while Mason fired bursts toward the ridge. Donnie laid down precision fire, picking off any movement that threatened them. But then, a sound she dreaded. The click of her last round. She was out of ammo. Her breath hitched. She checked her pouches. Nothing left but one pistol mag and a single smoke grenade. She reloaded her M17, crouching low. The SEALs were halfway across the canyon now, but she could see two enemies flanking fast from the far ridge. "Damn it," she muttered. She pulled the pin on the smoke grenade, tossed it high, and sprinted down the slope, using the billowing smoke as cover. Her boots slid through loose gravel as she ran. Bullets whizzed past, kicking up dust at her heels. She dove behind a boulder beside Cole, landing hard. Cole looked up, eyes wide. "Rhodes? You're insane." "Maybe," she panted, reloading her pistol. "But I'm not wrong." He laughed despite the chaos, shaking his head. "You shouldn't even be here." "Yeah, well, neither should you," she shot back. They exchanged a look, brief but electric, the kind that forged respect in seconds. Mason popped up, firing toward the enemy's last position. "We've got company closing from the north. At least 6 more." Cole gritted his teeth. No comes, no ammo, no chance. Donnie checked her watch. Reinforcements were at least 15 minutes out, assuming the base had even noticed her beacon signal. She met Cole's eyes. "You said you needed 10 minutes. I'll buy them." "What?" She stood, slung her rifle, and picked up the fallen MK-48 machine gun lying in the sand. "Get your men to the east split. There's an old drainage path. It leads straight to the lower ravine. I'll hold them off." Cole grabbed her arm. "You'll get yourself killed." Danny's expression didn't waver. "You don't get to tell me what I can or can't do, Chief." He hesitated, then nodded once. "Fine, make it count." She crouched behind the burning wreck of the Humvee, loading the MK-48's belt. Her hands were steady despite the shaking ground and pounding adrenaline. As the enemy appeared through the smoke, she squeezed the trigger. The weapon thundered, BRRRRT, spitting fire into the canyon. Dust and sand exploded with every burst. The attackers ducked for cover, firing blindly. Donnie shifted her position every few seconds, her mind running on muscle memory. She moved with purpose, every motion efficient. Her world became rhythm. Aim, fire, duck, reload. Over and over, until it was just noise and instinct. A bullet tore across her upper arm, hot pain flashing through her nerves. She grimaced but didn't falter. Her mind screamed at her to stop. Her body refused to listen. Then she saw them, the SEALs, disappearing into the canyon split, dragging Torres between them. Cole turned back once, raising his hand. She nodded. Just 10 minutes. That's all she had to give. When her gun finally jammed, she dropped it and switched to her sidearm again. The smoke around her was thick, turning the world gray. Her breathing came ragged now, chest tight. But the sound of enemy footsteps was fading. They were retreating, regrouping, maybe realizing the fight wasn't worth it. She slumped against the Humvee, chest heaving, pistol still ready. The silence returned, heavy, broken only by the crackle of burning metal. Then, over the radio, Cole's voice. "Angel, come in? Status?" She smiled faintly, pressing her hand to her bleeding arm. "Still flying, Chief. You're clear." Get to the LZ. Copy that, he said. You just bought us our lives. She looked out over the smoke and sand, the rising sun breaking through the haze. They called me just a girl with a gun, she whispered. Guess that was enough. The canyon air reeked of smoke and burnt metal. Every breath scorched Danny's lungs as she stumbled away from the wrecked Humvee, one hand pressed tightly against her bleeding arm. The world spun slightly, a dizzy blur of orange light and gray haze, but her mind refused to fade. The seals were alive. That was all that mattered. She adjusted the strap of her rifle, even though it was nearly useless now, and limped toward the canyon split where she'd last seen Cole and his men disappear. The radio at her shoulder crackled. Weak signal, faint static. Angel, you copy? Cole's voice filtered through, rough but alive. She pressed the button, breathing hard. Copy. I'm inbound. About 200 meters out. Be quick, he said. We've got movement on our 6. They're regrouping. Of course they were. Danny had bought them minutes, not victory. Her boots crunched over shale and bone-dry earth as she pushed deeper into the split. A narrow gorge barely wide enough for a Humvee, with jagged cliffs rising like walls on both sides. The sunlight faded fast here, swallowed by shadows. Up ahead, she saw them. Chief Cole, standing guard with his rifle raised. Mason, crouched by Torres, trying to bandage his leg. Torres was pale, eyes fluttering, blood pooling beneath him. Cole turned as she approached. You look like hell. Thanks, she muttered, kneeling beside Torres. He's losing too much blood. I know, Mason said, frustration etched in his voice. I can't stop it. He needs evac. She tore open her med pack and worked quickly. Gauze, pressure, adrenaline shot. Her hands were trembling now, but precise. Evac's not coming yet, she said. We move him or we lose him. Cole exhaled sharply. You can barely walk, Rhodes. I'll manage, she said, without looking up. For a moment, Cole studied her. The dirt on her face, the blood seeping through her torn sleeve, the calm fire in her eyes. Then he nodded. All right, let's move. They started down the ravine, staying low and silent. The sound of the wind howling between the rocks masked their footsteps, but Donnie's instincts screamed that they were being watched. She glanced back once and froze. 2 enemy scouts had appeared at the far end of the canyon, barely visible through the shimmer of heat and dust. They were moving fast, signaling to others behind them. Contact, Donnie hissed. Cole reacted instantly. Mason, get Torres under cover. Bullets sparked off the rocks as the team ducked for shelter. Donnie dropped flat, her shoulder flaring with pain as she raised her rifle. The scope was cracked, but she didn't need it. She fired 3 controlled bursts. 1 scout dropped. The other dove behind a boulder and radioed. More were coming. Cole knelt beside her. We can't win a firefight here. We're boxed in. Danny's mind raced. We move east, through the drainage tunnel, the one near the cliff bend. That tunnel's unstable, Mason protested. 1 wrong step, and the whole thing collapses. Danny's jaw tightened. Then step carefully. They had no other choice. Cole nodded, hauling Torres over his shoulder again. Mason covered their flank, while Danny led the way, hugging the canyon wall. The tunnel was ahead, a dark, jagged opening halfway up the slope, framed by broken stone. As they climbed, loose gravel slipped under their boots, clattering down the rocks. The echo would give away their position, but stealth no longer mattered, only speed. Behind them, the enemy shouted, "Closer now." "Move," Danny urged. She pushed Mason upward first, then helped Cole hoist Torres into the tunnel. She followed last, crawling into the darkness just as bullets ricocheted off the entrance. The inside was narrow and suffocating, the air thick with dust. Their flashlights cut through the dark, illuminating ancient rock carvings, maybe old smugglers' marks or tribal symbols long forgotten. Every sound echoed, their breathing, the drip of water, the distant rumble of rocks shifting above. Cole crouched low, whispering, "We hold here or collapse it?" "Not yet," Danny said. "We need distance first." They crawled deeper for nearly 20 minutes. Each step felt heavier, the tunnel walls pressing closer. Danny's arm was going numb now, her sleeves soaked through with dark crimson. Cole noticed. "You're bleeding worse." She forced a smirk. "You're observant. Rhodes, if you pass out in here—" "Then drag me," she interrupted. "We're not stopping." He shook his head, but there was a flicker of admiration in his eyes. Behind them, faint voices echoed through the tunnel entrance. The enemy was following. Mason cursed under his breath. "They're on our trail." Danny stopped, thinking fast. "There's a side passage about 50 meters ahead. Narrow, but defensible." Cole squinted at her. "You've been here before?" "Once," she said softly. "Years ago. Training mission. We used this route as an exfil path." She led them to the fork, a slit in the wall barely wide enough for one man at a time. "We set up here. We can funnel them in, one by one." Cole nodded grimly. "All right, Angel, let's make it count." They set Torres against the far wall, Mason beside him with what ammo they had left. Cole took the front, and Downey crouched next to him, reloading her pistol. When the first enemy appeared, flashlight slicing through the dark, Downey fired once, dead center. The man fell back instantly. Another followed, shouting in Dari. Cole opened up with a burst from his rifle, sparks lighting the walls. The tunnel erupted with noise and chaos. Downey moved like instinct. Shoot, reload, move. The confined space turned the gunfire deafening, but she didn't flinch. Her training had burned fear out of her long ago. Then suddenly, silence. Cole reloaded. "That it?" "Doubt it," Danny whispered. She was right. Seconds later, a grenade rolled through the tunnel floor, spinning toward them. "Down!" she yelled, diving over Torres. The blast shook the cave, dirt raining from above. The tunnel groaned like a living thing, the walls cracking. "Go, move now," she shouted. They scrambled down the narrow corridor as the ceiling began to collapse behind them. Stones thundered down, sealing the path with a cloud of choking dust. When they finally stopped, coughing and gasping, they were alone, the echoes gone. Mason leaned against the wall, trembling. "They're trapped." "We did it." Donnie nodded weakly, then staggered. Her vision blurred, the edges of the world dimming. Cole caught her before she fell. "Rhodes!" "Stay with me." "I'm fine," she murmured, though her knees said otherwise. He eased her down gently, pressing his hand to her shoulder wound. "You've lost too much blood." "Not yet," she said faintly. "We still have to reach the ravine." Cole's jaw clenched. "We'll make it. I promise." Hours passed like minutes. They navigated the dark passage until it finally opened into daylight. Again, a steep descent into a sunlit valley surrounded by towering cliffs. It was beautiful in a cruel way, golden dust swirling through shafts of sunlight, the sound of distant thunder rolling through the mountains. Donnie blinked against the brightness, dizzy but standing. Cole adjusted Torres on his shoulder again. Mason scouted ahead. They were free for now. But far behind them, through the dust and echoes of the canyon, a low rumble began to grow, the unmistakable sound of engines. Helicopters. Cole's head snapped up. "You hear that?" "Yeah." Danny said, squinting toward the horizon. Could be ours, or theirs. She nodded grimly. We'll find out soon enough. Cole looked at her then. Really looked. Bloodied, bruised, exhausted. Yet unbroken. You know, he said quietly, they called you just a girl with a gun. Danny smirked through the pain. Yeah, well, I think they're reconsidering. The wind picked up, scattering sand like sparks. In the distance, 2 helicopters appeared over the ridge. One marked with U.S. insignia, the other not. Cole tightened his grip on his weapon. Danny chambered her last round. Looks like round 2, she said. The whirring of rotor blades grew louder, slicing through the still desert air like thunder. Dust spiraled around the team as the 2 helicopters appeared over the ridge, one flying low and dark, no insignia visible. The other bearing faint U.S. markings that glinted in the morning sun. For a moment, no one spoke. The SEALs crouched in the shadow of a boulder, weapons raised but unsure who to point them at. Danny wiped blood from her cheek with the back of her hand, squinting up into the blazing sky. Cole's voice cut through the wind. Which one's ours? Danny scanned the flight pattern. The lead bird's too high. Ours usually hug low to avoid radar. That one, she pointed to the lower helicopter banking right, isn't flying like ours. It's hunting. Cole swore under his breath. So we're being chased by mercs. More likely insurgents who stole NATO birds, she said flatly. Either way, they're not here to rescue us. Mason's grip on his rifle tightened. Then what's the plan? Danny looked at Torres, who was barely conscious, his face white as chalk. We protect him. He's bleeding out, but he's our only link to the intel they were after. He survives. The mission survives. Cole nodded grimly. And you? She smiled faintly. I'll distract them. No. Cole's voice was sharp. Not a chance. Chief, she said quietly, eyes unwavering, you've got a wounded man and 1 operative. I'm the only one who can still move fast. They'll be looking for movement for noise. Let me give it to them. Cole stared at her for a long moment. You won't make it back. Maybe not, she said, checking her sidearm. But if I don't, none of us do. The 2 helicopters split. The hostile bird dove lower, circling the valley like a vulture. The faint shatter of a minigun spun up from under its nose. Go! Danny barked, motioning toward a cluster of rocks on the east side of the valley. Use the gorge for cover, head for the dried riverbed. It'll lead to the extraction zone. Cole hesitated. Danny, she cut him off with a look. You said it yourself. Make it count. He clenched his jaw, then nodded once. You better not die on my watch, Rhodes. No promises. And then she was gone, sprinting across the open sand, the sun blazing down on her like fire. The first bullets tore through the ground near her feet, spraying grit into her face. She zigzagged, her boots slipping on loose rock as she reached the wreck of an old supply truck half buried in sand. Diving behind it, she reloaded her rifle, took aim, and fired a controlled burst toward the chopper's underbelly. The bullets sparked harmlessly against the armor plating, but it was enough to make the gunner adjust. The helicopter tilted slightly, turning its side toward her. That's when she saw it, the fuel pod beneath the tail boom, partially exposed. A weakness. Come on, she muttered, exhaling slowly. She steadied her aim, ignoring the pain in her arm. Her finger tightened. Crack. The bullet slammed into the pod. For a heartbeat, nothing happened, and then a violent explosion ripped through the sky. The helicopter spun out of control, black smoke trailing like a comet's tail. It veered left, slammed into the side of the canyon, and burst into flames. The sound shook the valley. From the gorge, Cole and Mason watched in stunned silence. Holy hell, Mason whispered. She did it. Cole's heart pounded as he grabbed Torres and kept moving. She bought us 5 minutes. Let's not waste it. Donnie stumbled from her cover, coughing as the burning wreckage belched smoke into the air. Her ears rang from the blast, and her vision blurred, but she smiled through the haze. One down, she whispered. Then she heard it, another sound. The second helicopter, the one she'd hoped was friendly, was descending fast. Its nose light swept the canyon floor, searching. Through the smoke, she saw the faint silhouette of soldiers rappelling down ropes. At first, she dared to hope. Reinforcements. But then she saw the flag patch on their arms, not American. Her stomach dropped. Private contractors. Foreign mercenaries. She ducked behind a rock as bullets chewed into the sand where she'd stood. Her radio crackled weakly. Rhodes, this is Cole. We saw the crash. You clear? Negative, she hissed. We've got hostiles on ground. Unknown unit, Black Deer. Moving in on your position from the west. Get Torres out of sight now. Copy that, Cole said. We'll hold the ravine. Don't hold, she snapped. Run. The mercenaries spread out in a tactical line, advancing methodically. Donnie counted at least 8 through her scope. They were professionals, disciplined, coordinated. They weren't chasing her. They were flanking. Her throat tightened. They were after the SEALs. She couldn't let that happen. Donnie crawled to a vantage point atop a low ridge, her muscles screaming in protest. Every move sent shockwaves of pain through her shoulder and leg. She loaded her last full magazine, clicked the bolt into place, and drew in a slow breath. Through the haze, she saw them, Cole and Mason dragging Torres toward the gorge, barely visible through the smoke. The mercenaries were closing fast. She whispered under her breath, "Not today." Her rifle barked once. Then again. 2 mercs went down before the rest scattered for cover. They returned fire immediately, forcing her to duck. Bullets chipped stone inches from her face. She reloaded, moved positions, and kept firing, never staying still long enough to be targeted. Her body worked on instinct, every motion precise, trained, lethal. But the odds were impossible. A round clipped her helmet, spinning her sideways. Her vision went white for a second. She landed hard, head ringing. Her rifle skittered out of reach. Through blurred sight, she saw a mercenary climbing up the ridge toward her, rifle raised. She reached for her sidearm, fingers slipping, and fired. The man dropped. She panted, every breath burning. Her radio hissed again. "Rhodes, where are you?" Cole's voice was urgent now. She pressed the transmit button weakly. "Doesn't matter. Just keep moving. You'll hit the extraction ridge in 6 minutes." "You're not staying behind," Cole growled. "I am," she said softly. "Someone has to make sure they don't follow." "Donnie?" She smiled faintly, eyes on the horizon. "Tell command they were wrong about me." The wind howled through the valley, carrying the stench of smoke and cordite. The remaining mercenaries regrouped below, calling out to each other in foreign tongues. Donnie forced herself to crawl to her rifle, wincing as her vision dimmed. She rested the barrel against a rock, her fingers steady despite the tremor in her arm. 3 targets. That's all she could see. She squeezed the trigger. 1 fell. Adjusted. Another dropped. The 3rd fired back, his rounds striking the dirt beside her face. She didn't move. She waited, patient, calm, calculating the rhythm of his shots. When his mag clicked empty, she fired once. Silence. The canyon was still again. She leaned back, exhaling shakily. Her rifle slipped from her hand, falling to the dirt beside her. Above, the black plume of smoke from the wrecked helicopter twisted into the crimson sky. Cole's voice came faintly through the radio. Angel, status? She looked toward the horizon, where the seals were disappearing into safety, where the sun was bleeding gold across the mountains, and smiled. Still flying, she whispered. Her hand dropped, and the radio fell silent. An hour later, U.S. rescue birds finally arrived, guided by the beacon Cole had activated once they reached the extraction zone. The first thing the rescue pilot saw was smoke and wreckage, then a single figure lying motionless on the ridge. Danny Rhodes. Her body was battered, uniform scorched, but her rifle still lay across her chest, empty, barrel still warm. Cole stood over her quietly, helmet in hand. Mason saluted beside him, eyes red. She held them off. Cole said softly, "All of them." The medic knelt to check for a pulse and froze. "Sir, she's alive." Cole's head snapped up. "What?" "Barely. But she's breathing." For the first time all day, Cole allowed himself to smile. "And get her on that bird." As the helicopter lifted off, carrying Danny's broken body into the fading light, Cole looked out across the battlefield. Smoke, fire, silence, and felt a strange mix of pride and guilt. The world would never know what really happened here. Command would file it under classified, names redacted, mission details erased. But those who survived would remember. They'd remember the girl everyone dismissed, the one they called just a girl with a gun, the one who saved a SEAL team and refused to die doing it. The first thing Danny felt was pain, sharp, relentless, crawling through every nerve like fire. The second was the smell, disinfectant, sterile, and cold, mixed with something faintly metallic. When she opened her eyes, white light flooded her vision. For a moment, she thought she was dead. Then she heard the beeping, steady, rhythmic, the sound of a heart monitor. She wasn't dead. Not yet. Her throat felt dry as sandpaper. She tried to speak, but her lips only formed a cracked whisper. "Where am I?" A voice answered from somewhere to her right, calm, deep, familiar. "You're at Ramstein Air Base, Germany. You've been out for 5 days." Her eyes shifted slowly toward the sound. Chief Ryan Cole stood beside her bed, arms folded, uniform pressed, but his face worn with fatigue. He gave a faint, relieved smile. "Welcome back, Angel." She tried to return it, but pain tightened her face instead. "The team?" "Alive," he said. "Torres pulled through. Mason's stable. We all made it out, thanks to you." Her gaze flicked to the window. Through it, she could see gray skies and rain tapping the glass. Europe, far from the burning valley she'd left behind. Danny swallowed hard. "And the others?" Cole hesitated, then sighed. "Those mercs you took down, they weren't supposed to be there." "Command's keeping things quiet." Her brows furrowed. "Quiet? You mean classified?" "Something like that," he said carefully. Hours passed in silence. The hospital room was clean but lonely. White walls, machines humming softly, and 4 dripping rhythmically beside her. Every movement reminded her of the damage she'd taken. Fractured ribs, a bullet lodged near her shoulder, and burns across her side. The doctors called it a miracle. She called it unfinished business. When the door opened again, she expected Cole. Instead, 2 officers stepped in, both wearing crisp uniforms and unreadable expressions. The woman spoke first. "Sergeant Danielle Rhodes?" Danny tried to sit up, wincing. "That's me. I'm Colonel Avery. This is Major Rains," the woman said, setting a tablet on the bedside table. "We're conducting a debrief of Operation Hollow Doom." Her blood ran cold. That was the operation's real name, a mission that wasn't supposed to exist. "Debrief?" she said quietly. "Or containment?" Neither officer reacted. Rains began scrolling through data on his screen. According to satellite telemetry, your unit was ambushed by insurgent forces. Casualties minimal. Enemy forces neutralized. Mission compromised, but completed. That's not what happened, Donnie said sharply. Avery raised an eyebrow. Isn't it? Danny stared at her. You're rewriting it. The colonel's tone stayed even. You're under medical observation, Sergeant. Trauma can distort memory. What matters is that you and your team survived. Donnie's heart pounded. I shot down a stolen NATO bird. I engaged private military contractors on U.S. soil. You can't just erase that. Rains looked up from his screen. You mean you won't let us? Silence hung between them like a blade. Then Avery leaned forward slightly. You're a soldier, Rhodes? You follow orders. The report will read as we say, or your career ends here. Danny met her gaze, voice calm but cold. Ma'am, my career already ended in that canyon. The colonel's expression didn't change. Then we understand each other. They stood, gathering their things. As they turned to leave, Avery added, You're a hero, Sergeant, in the version we'll allow. The door closed softly behind them. For the first time since she'd woken, Danny felt something she hadn't on the battlefield, helplessness. She stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning. How many times had she risked her life for the truth, only to watch it get buried under politics and fear? Cole entered again hours later, a quiet shadow in the doorway. You look like you're ready to tear the place down, he said softly. Tempting, she murmured. They're rewriting everything. They're calling it an ambush by insurgents. He nodded grimly. I know. They gave me the same script. Did you agree? I said what I had to say, he replied, pulling a chair beside her bed. They're not after the truth, Danny. They're after a clean story. She turned her head to him, eyes fierce. And we just let them? Cole hesitated. You can't fight the machine. Not like this. You did your job. You saved lives. That's what counts. Her voice cracked, low and raw. It's not enough. Not if the truth dies with it. He looked at her for a long moment and leaned forward. You know, back there in the canyon, I thought I was dead. You made me believe in something again. But this fight, he tapped the hospital wall lightly. This one's dirtier. Be smart. Donnie studied his face, the exhaustion, the sincerity, the scars that weren't physical. She nodded slowly. Smart. Right. But inside, something else was forming. Not surrender, but resolve. 3 days later, she was cleared for limited movement. The doctors warned her not to strain herself, but Donnie never listened to warnings. Late that night, when the ward fell quiet, she pulled herself out of bed, wincing with every step. Her bare feet padded softly against the cold tile floor as she made her way down the corridor. She wasn't looking for trouble. She was looking for proof. At the end of the hallway was the restricted operations office, locked, but guarded only by a sleepy MP, half distracted by his phone. Danny smiled faintly. The same military that could silence truth still couldn't post alert guards. She waited until he turned away, then slipped inside the adjoining records room. Inside, screens glowed with mission data and after-action reports. She found the file labeled Hollow Dune Classified, AR. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment before she began scrolling. Everything had been sanitized. Timelines altered, coordinates erased, casualty lists shortened. Not one mention of private contractors. Not one line about the stolen NATO helicopter. But there, hidden deep in the file, a single fragment of unedited satellite feed. Her pulse quickened. It showed her, standing on the ridge, rifle raised, smoke rising behind her. Then the crash, the explosion, the mercenaries advancing. The footage cut out mid-battle, but it was enough. Proof. She copied the file to a data stick and slipped it into her hospital wristband just as footsteps echoed outside. Sergeant Rhodes? Cole's voice. She froze. Then he stepped in, his eyes scanning the screens, then her. "What are you doing?" "Finding the truth," she said quietly. He sighed. "You can't win this fight." She met his gaze. "Maybe not, but I can make sure it's remembered." He stared at her for a long time, then exhaled heavily. "You've got 5 minutes before the cameras cycle back on." Her eyes widened slightly. "You knew I'd try this." He gave a small, tired smile. "Of course I did. You're Danny Rhodes." By morning, she was gone. All that remained was a folded note on her hospital bed, addressed to Cole. "Don't let them bury it. The truth doesn't die just because they're afraid of it." "See you on the other side, Chief." Angel Cole read it twice, jaw tightening. He looked out the window, at the gray dawn, at the rain streaking down the glass, and knew she wasn't just talking about the war. Somewhere out there, she was already moving again. 2 days later, leaked footage began surfacing online. Grainy, shaky, but unmistakable. It showed the firefight, the downed helicopter, and one lone figure standing against impossible odds. Within hours, social media exploded. "Who is she?" the headlines asked. "The unknown soldier who saved the SEALs." The Pentagon refused to comment. The operation remained officially undisclosed. But the soldiers who'd been there, Cole, Mason, Torres, they knew the truth. And somewhere far from command posts and politics, Donnie Rhodes watched the coverage on a flickering motel TV, her shoulder still bandaged, a faint smile tugging at her lips. She didn't need medals. She didn't need permission. She had done her duty, and now she was free. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky. She picked up her bag, slung it over her good shoulder, and stepped into the rain. The world would keep its secrets. But Donnie Rhodes, the girl they called just a girl with a gun, was done staying silent. The rain hadn't stopped for 3 days. It came in sheets that blurred the highways, swallowing the neon signs of gas stations and roadside diners. Donnie sat in the corner booth of one such diner, a faded place off Route 15 in North Carolina, where truckers came to disappear and no one asked for names. A steaming mug of coffee sat untouched in front of her, its surface trembling with each roll of thunder outside. She wore a gray hoodie under a battered leather jacket. Her right shoulder still ached from the bullet wound, but she could move it now, good enough for what she had planned. Across from her sat an old contact, Eddie Park, former Marine turned freelance tech fixer. His eyes darted nervously around the room. "You know you're on half the world's watch list, right? Every agency from the CIA to the Pentagon wants a word with you." Danny sipped her coffee calmly. "Then it's a good thing I'm not answering the phone." He gave a low whistle. "You leaked classified combat footage, Downey. That's treason." She leaned in, voice steady. "It's truth." Eddie sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Truth doesn't pay bail, sweetheart. What's your next move?" She slid a folded piece of paper across the table. "These coordinates. Satellite uplink logs show unauthorized drone traffic 2 hours before the ambush. I need to know who was watching." He opened it, frowning. "You think someone fed the enemy your position?" "I don't think," she said softly. "I know." Eddie hesitated, then nodded slowly. "I can dig. But if this trail leads where I think it does, you're not just fighting ghosts. You're fighting gods." "Then let's start digging," she said, eyes cold. That night, Donnie drove a rented pickup down the coast. The headlights carved a thin path through the storm, illuminating flashes of pine and sand. She kept the radio off, Too risky, and the windows cracked, just enough for the smell of wet earth to mix with the faint metallic tang of gun oil. Her mind wouldn't quiet. Images replayed over and over. The ambush, the explosion, Cole's face, the colonel's cold warning. But behind it all, one question pulsed louder than the rest. Who set them up? Her phone buzzed once. Eddie's message appeared on the cracked screen. Got something. You were right. Drone operator wasn't NATO. It was Stratsec Industries. Private contract. Unauthorized feed rerouted through a black server in Virginia. Someone paid them to track you. Stratsec. The name sent a chill through her veins. They were one of the largest private military companies in the world, officially logistics support, unofficially a shadow army for hire. And they'd been in Hollow Dune. 2 days later, she arrived in Washington, D.C. It was strange, walking the streets again. She'd once marched through this city in uniform, saluted by strangers who didn't know her name, but respected the flag she wore. Now, every glance felt like suspicion. Cameras followed her from rooftops. Security drones hummed overhead. She found Eddie waiting in a quiet park off the Potomac, his laptop balanced on a bench. I traced the payment, he said, eyes fixed on the screen. Came from a shell company in Delaware, owned by a congressional subcommittee fund. Government money, she murmured. He nodded grimly. And here's the kicker. Stratsec's director, Marcus Halle, used to be deputy commander of special operations. The man who signed off on Operation Hollow Dune. Danny's fists tightened. He ordered it. Eddie shook his head. No, he sold it. The intel leak that got your team ambushed, he auctioned it off. To both sides? The revelation hit like a gut punch. He killed my team for profit. Careful, Eddie warned. You go after a man like Halle, you'll be fighting more than one monster. He's connected, protected, and paranoid. Danny's eyes narrowed. So am I. That night, she broke into Stratsec's D.C. office. The building was glass and steel, all sharp edges and quiet power. She moved through the corridors like a shadow. Every step measured, every corner cleared. Her military training had never left her. It had only gotten sharper. On the top floor, behind a biometric lock, she found Hale's office. The desk was immaculate, the view breathtaking, the Capitol dome glowing faintly through the rain-streaked window. She searched fast, scanning files, pulling hard drives, snapping photos of contracts. Her pulse quickened when she found one labeled Hollow Dune, External Asset Coordination. Inside, a payment ledger. Names, dates, coordinates. And there it was. SEAL Team 9, compromised. Payment authorized by Mahal, the proof she needed. But just as she pocketed the drive, the door creaked open. Sergeant Rhodes, said a smooth, commanding voice. Danny froze. Halle stood there in a tailored suit, flanked by 2 security guards. He looked older than she remembered from the news. Gray hair, sharp eyes that had seen war and learned to monetize it. Breaking and entering? He said lightly. That's no way for a hero to behave. Donnie turned slowly, her hand drifting toward her sidearm. You set us up. You killed my people. He smiled faintly. Collateral. You think you were the first? The world runs on controlled chaos, Sergeant. You did your part. You played your role. You sold American soldiers. I invested in outcomes, he replied. You survived. That makes you valuable, if you're smart enough to stay quiet. Her jaw clenched. I'm done being quiet. Hale's smirk faded. He nodded to his guards. Take her. They moved fast, but Danny faster. She slammed the desk lamp into one's face, spun low, and drove her knee into the other's chest. A gunshot cracked. A flash of pain ripped across her ribs. But she didn't stop. She tackled Hale, pinning him against the desk. Papers flew, glass shattered. "Who else knows?" she hissed. His voice broke with fear. "You can't win." "I already did," she said, and hit him with the butt of her gun. He crumpled to the floor. Donnie grabbed the drive, shoved it into her jacket, and staggered toward the window. Red lights flashed below, security converging. No time. She smashed the glass and leapt into the storm. By dawn, the city was on alert. Hale's building was in lockdown, his injuries classified, and the FBI had issued a national manhunt for Danielle Rhodes, armed and dangerous. News channels spun every angle: Schrader, whistleblower, rogue operative. But among veterans and soldiers, a different nickname began to spread online: the Ghost of Hollow Dune. Eddie met her one last time in an abandoned train yard outside Richmond. "You're bleeding again," he said quietly, helping her into the shadows. "Just a scratch," she muttered, pressing a rag to her side. He handed her a burner drive. "I uploaded the files to 6 international networks. If anything happens to you, the world sees everything." Danny looked at him, tired, grateful. "You didn't have to do this." "Yeah," he said with a crooked smile. "But I owed you one. And someone's got to keep the ghost alive." She exhaled slowly, the rain pattering on rusted metal above. "They'll come after you." "They already are," he said. "Go. End this." She nodded once, then pulled her hood up and melted into the dawn mist. Back in Washington, Marcus Hale awoke in a hospital bed, his jaw wired shut, his arm in a cast. On the muted television across from him, breaking news flashed. Leaked files reveal illegal contracts between Stratsec and government officials. Source unknown. His face went pale. He knew. She'd done it. Outside the hospital, black SUVs arrived, not his men, but federal agents. The empire he'd built on secrets was crumbling. Far away, Downey stood on a rocky cliff overlooking the Atlantic, the wind whipping her hair. The sun was rising, faint, cold, and distant. She'd lost her name, her home, her career. But she'd reclaimed something bigger, the truth. She took one last look at the horizon, whispered to the wind, "For the team," and walked toward a waiting fishing boat that would take her off-grid. Somewhere in the depths of the ocean breeze, she could almost hear their voices. Mason, Torres, Cole, alive in her memory, proud of her fight. She smiled faintly. The ghost was still standing. The Atlantic wind tore across the deck of the small fishing boat, tangling Danny's hair around her face. The early sun painted the waves a sharp gold, reflecting like fire across the restless sea. She leaned against the railing, shoulders stiff, her mind replaying every moment of the past weeks. The canyon, the explosions, the helicopters, the betrayal, the leaks. She was free. But freedom came with weight. Eddie had vanished into the network of hackers and ex-military ghosts he'd long operated with. Hale had been arrested, charges quietly pressed, trials delayed, public scrutiny simmering. Stratsec's contracts were under investigation, and the leaked files were being picked apart by journalists worldwide. Her name was not officially mentioned, but the internet had already dubbed her the Ghost of Hollow Dune. She wanted no credit, but the world would know it anyway. The boat rocked gently, the only sound the waves and the hum of the motor. Danny removed her jacket, revealing the scars along her side, burns, bruises, bullet wounds that had left permanent marks. She traced one with her fingers and smiled faintly. Pain was part of survival, she thought. It marked who she was and what she'd endured. Angel? She turned. A shadow moved from the cabin entrance. A man, older, wearing the plain uniform of the Coast Guard. "I'm Commander Ellis. You requested pickup." Donnie nodded. "I'm ready." He studied her for a moment. Not everyone would come back after everything you've done. I'm not everyone, she said, voice calm. I finished my mission. He nodded slowly. Good. Then let's get you to safety. The Coast Guard ship was quiet compared to the chaos she'd left behind. Donnie walked the deck slowly, every step careful, every muscle aware of its limits. The crew kept their distance, sensing the gravity of her presence, but none questioned her. She stopped at the railing, staring at the endless horizon. The waves looked like molten silver in the morning sun. For a moment, she allowed herself to breathe, truly breathe. Then a small commotion drew her attention. She turned to see a young reporter on board, notepad in hand, eyes wide. Ms. Rhodes? She froze. Not her real name. But the boy's curiosity was innocent. Yes? She asked cautiously. I wanted to know. How did you do it? The ghost of Hollow Doom. How did you survive when no one else could? Donnie smiled faintly. Survival isn't about luck. It's about focus, discipline, and sometimes a little stubbornness. The reporter scribbled furiously, not realizing he was capturing a moment that would echo across social media, even as her identity remained officially secret. Later, in the ship's infirmary, Donnie removed her remaining bandages and inspected her wounds in the mirror. Each scar told a story, and she had hundreds more etched into her memory. Cole had sent a brief message through Eddie, congratulating her on exposing Holly and keeping the team alive. Mason and Torres had survived fully, recovering in secure military hospitals. She felt the weight of it all. The team was alive, but their enemies still lurked in shadows, watching, waiting for opportunities. She had become more than a soldier. She had become a symbol, an unknown hero fighting not only enemy forces, but the bureaucracy and greed that had endangered her people. Days turned into weeks as she traveled discreetly, avoiding cameras and digital footprints. She learned that being a legend meant being invisible. The ghost wasn't someone people could point to. She was the story whispered in shadows, shared online with respect and awe, without ever revealing her name. In a safe house overlooking the coast, she studied the files Eddie had given her. Stratzek's dealings spanned continents, involving politicians, mercenaries, and intelligence officers. Every lead she followed uncovered more corruption, more lives at risk. And yet, Donnie did not falter. One evening, as the sun set in a blood-orange sky, Donnie received an encrypted message from Cole. Angel, the team wants to see you. Confidential meeting. Coordinates attached. No risks. She studied the map. It led to a remote facility in North Carolina, isolated and secure. The next day she arrived. Cole, Mason, and Torres were waiting. Older, battle-worn, but alive. Their eyes lit up when they saw her. You made it, Cole said, voice rough. I always do, she replied, a faint grin tugging at her lips. Torres stepped forward, holding a small folded flag. For you. The team says it's yours. Donnie took it, unfolding the fabric slowly. Stars and stripes gleamed in the setting sun. The weight of it, symbolic, meaningful, pressed against her chest. You saved us all, Mason said simply. I did my job, Donnie said softly. And you? You all did yours. Cole nodded, understanding. We should have said it before, but we're proud of you, Angel. Always have been. That night, they shared a quiet moment by the shore. Waves crashed against the rocks, their rhythm echoing the chaos they had endured together. Do you ever think about going back? Torres asked, voice hesitant. Going back where? Danny replied. To a normal life, Mason added. Or do you? Keep moving? Danny stared at the horizon. I've seen too much to go back. But maybe. I can make a difference in ways that no one else can. Cole chuckled softly. That's our angel. Always a step ahead, always dangerous. And always stubborn, she said, smirking. They laughed quietly, knowing the world outside would never understand the depth of what they had survived, or the battles that had yet to come. Weeks later, Dani found herself in a small village in the Appalachian Mountains, living off the grid. She trained daily, honed her skills, and followed the threads of corruption she had uncovered. Her legend spread quietly. Soldiers whispered her name. Hackers and activists hailed her as a symbol of courage. Journalists pieced together fragments of her story, calling her the girl who took on the impossible. But Dani didn't seek recognition. She didn't need it. The real reward was knowing that she had saved lives, uncovered truths, and survived when the odds were stacked against her. She stood on a cliff overlooking the valley below, the wind whipping her hair, the stars emerging in the night sky. Somewhere far off, the world slept unaware of the battles fought and won. And she smiled. In the end, Dani Rhodes, the girl with a gun, had become more than just a soldier. She was a force, a ghost, a legend. Not because of medals or titles, not because of speeches or ceremonies, but because she had faced impossible odds, stared death in the face, defied corruption, and lived to tell the story. And somewhere, in the hearts of those she saved, she would live forever. Somewhere, in the whispers of history, her name would echo. Angel, the ghost, the girl with a gun.